My girlfriend said, "I don't like your kids from your last marriage." I said, "I hear you," and ended it her instantly. She tried to backpedal when she realized she was the one who had to leave, not my kids. She looked me in the eye and said my kids ruined our vibe. My response was just 2 words, uttered with terrifying calm, and it absolutely obliterated everything between us. The air in the living room felt thick, heavy with an unspoken tension I'd ignored for too long. She sat there, oblivious, scrolling on her phone, utterly unaware of the earthquake she had just triggered. The moment she said it, I knew. Jessica Walsh had just signed her own eviction notice from my house. And when the truth finally hit her, that she was the one leaving, not my children, she tried every manipulation trick in the book to backpedal. It's only been 3 weeks, and I'm still reeling, still processing how someone I thought I knew could call my own children an inconvenience. But seeing the pure shock on her face, the moment she realized she had zero leverage? Honestly, it was almost worth the 8 months I'd wasted. My name is David Reed. I'm 35, and I've been a single dad to Caleb and Ella for about 3 years now. Caleb just turned 8, Ella's 6, and they are everything to me. Their mom, Sarah, and I split when Ella was 3. No drama, no fighting. We just grew apart and decided co-parenting was better than forcing something broken. We do 50-50 custody, 1 week on, 1 week off. It works because we both prioritize the kids over our egos. I work in project management, own my 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, and my life is soccer games, homework help, and bedtime stories. Typical dad life. About 8 months ago, I met Jessica Walsh on a dating app. She was 29, some kind of lifestyle influencer, into fitness and aesthetic coffee photos, all that Instagram culture stuff. The first few months were easy, no pressure, just casual fun. Then, about 4 months in, Jessica started dropping hints. My custody schedule, she said, made planning hard. Maybe she could stay over more often? I considered it. Thought, hey, having someone around could be nice. So, I let her keep some things here. Not a full move-in, just enough that she was sleeping over most nights. That's when I started noticing things. First, it was little comments, observations about toys on the floor, how the house felt chaotic when Caleb and Ella were home, how maybe we could organize things better. Then she started buying stuff. New throw pillows, matching white mugs to replace my random collection. Candles everywhere, like she was staging the place for her Instagram grid. I let it slide. Figured she just liked things neat. But the comments got sharper. She'd sigh when the kids were loud. Roll her eyes when Caleb forgot his backpack by the door. And one time she straight up asked if they had to be there every single week, like custody was negotiable. I shut that down hard. Told her the schedule wasn't up for discussion. She backed off, saying she was just tired. But I could feel the tension every time Caleb and Ella were home. Jessica would suddenly have plans with her friends, Michelle, Chloe, and Nicole, or she'd lock herself in the bedroom filming content. Anything to avoid actually interacting with my kids. She never once asked about their day. Never played with them. Never even tried. She just tolerated their existence. Because she wanted access to me. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until a few days later, was what she was doing when I wasn't around. The little comments she'd make to them. The sighs when Caleb asked her a question. The way she'd ignore Ella when she wanted to show her a drawing. I had no idea she was planting poison in their heads, telling them Daddy seemed stressed when they visited. Maybe they should be quieter. Maybe they were too much. Manipulative garbage designed to make 2 little kids feel like they were a burden to their own father. But I didn't know that yet. I just knew something felt wrong, and I was starting to regret letting her move in, even partially. Then came the Sunday that ended everything. The kids were at Sarah's for the week, and Jessica was on the couch with wine, scrolling her phone, completely relaxed. I was cleaning up the kitchen, thinking about work stuff. Normal evening. Then she just casually said maybe the kids could come around less, like once a month instead of every week, so we'd have more couple time. I froze, dish soap dripping, and slowly turned around. Could you repeat that? I asked. She doubled down. Said it would be better for our relationship if Caleb and Ella weren't here so much. Said the house felt more like ours when it was just us. Then she dropped the absolute bomb: she didn't like my kids. My children, from my previous marriage, ruined our vibe. She said it so casually, like she was suggesting we order pizza instead of cooking. The room went silent. I put down the dish, dried my hands, and walked over to where she sat. She looked up with this expectant face, like she actually thought I'd consider it, like my children were furniture I could rearrange for her comfort. I just looked at her. And I said 2 words. I hear you. So calm. No emotion, just utter clarity. And she smiled. A genuine smile. She actually thought I was agreeing. Started prattling on about making it work, maybe the kids could stay at Sarah's more. That's when I finished. We're done. Jessica, you need to move out. Her face went from happy to confused to panicked in 3 seconds flat. She backpedaled immediately. Said she didn't mean it like that. Said she was just communicating. Said I was overreacting. I told her she said exactly what she meant. And anyone who sees my kids as a problem doesn't belong in my life. She tried arguing, said relationships need compromise. I told her this wasn't negotiable. She didn't get to bargain away my children's place in their own home. That's when reality hit her. She wasn't staying. She was leaving. She looked around like she suddenly realized none of this was hers. Asked if I was seriously kicking her out. I told her this was my house. I owned it before I met her, and she was the one leaving, not Caleb, not Ella, asterisk her star. She cried. Said I was cruel. Said she just needed time to adjust. I told her she had 30 days to find a place. I'd give her legal notice in the morning, and we were done. She spent the rest of the night trying to change my mind. But I slept in Caleb's room, door locked, surrounded by his superhero posters and glow-in-the-dark stars, and felt more peace than I had in months. Next morning, I printed a formal 30-day eviction notice and left it on the kitchen counter. Jessica came downstairs, saw the paperwork. Her face went white. She asked if I was serious, and I told her I'd never been more serious in my life. My kids come first, always have, always will, and anyone who doesn't get that doesn't belong here. The eviction notice sat on my counter for exactly 4 hours before Jessica decided she wasn't leaving without a fight. And that's when my house turned into a war zone. She came downstairs Monday morning, saw the paperwork, and instead of apartment hunting, she poured coffee and told me she wasn't going anywhere until she was ready, like she had any say in the matter. I didn't argue, just forwarded the notice to her email for a paper trail and went to work. That week was my week without the kids. Caleb and Ella were at Sarah's, and honestly, I was glad they wouldn't witness what was coming. I got home that evening to find Jessica had rearranged the living room, moved furniture like she was claiming territory, and invited Michelle and Chloe over for wine, like this was still her house. I walked past without a word, went straight to my office, opened Excel, and started documenting everything: dates, times, behaviors, damages, anything that might matter in court. Her friends left around 9, looking uncomfortable. And Jessica came to my door asking if we could talk like adults. I told her the eviction notice said everything needed, and she slammed the bedroom door hard enough to shake the walls. Next morning, I changed the Wi-Fi password. Not out of spite, just logic. She wasn't a resident anymore. She was a guest with an expiration date, and guests don't get full utility access. She lost it when her phone wouldn't connect. Came downstairs screaming about me being petty and cruel. I explained the internet bill was in my name, paid by me, and she could get her own hotspot if she needed one. She called me every name she could think of, said her followers needed her to post content, and I just went back to making breakfast. That's when the sabotage started. My coffee tasted weird Tuesday morning, and when I checked the machine, I found salt mixed in the grounds, just enough to ruin it, but not obvious. Took photos, logged it in my spreadsheet, bought new coffee I kept locked in my office. A few days later, my laptop cable was cut, a clean slice through the cord. Asked Jessica about it. She said maybe it just wore out. Ordered a replacement. Added the cost to my damage total. Started keeping all electronics in my locked office. Then came the notes. Passive-aggressive messages left around the house. One on the bathroom mirror in lipstick said, "You'll regret this." Another on the fridge said, "Your kids will always remember you chose to be alone." I photographed every single one before throwing them away. Wednesday evening, still my week without the kids, Sarah called sounding worried. She said Ella had asked if Daddy was mad at them, if they were too loud, if that's why Jessica didn't like them. My stomach dropped. Sarah explained both kids had been saying things over the past few weeks, little comments they'd made about their time at my house. Ella told her that Jessica said Daddy gets tired when they're around, and maybe they should play quieter so I wouldn't be stressed. Caleb mentioned that Jessica told him I seemed happier during the weeks they were gone, that maybe they were too much work for me. Sarah said one afternoon Ella asked her if kids from previous marriages were harder to love than kids from current marriages. And that question broke Sarah's heart because she knew exactly where it came from. I felt physically sick. While I was at work thinking everything was fine, Jessica had been poisoning my children's perception of themselves and of me, making them feel like burdens in their own father's house. Sarah had already talked to both of them, reassured them it was all lies, that I loved having them around, that Jessica was just being cruel. I told Sarah about the breakup and eviction, and she actually laughed, said it was about time, that she'd never trusted Jessica, but didn't want to overstep. That phone call changed everything. I went from wanting Jessica out to needing her gone immediately, but legally, I was stuck with the 30 days unless she did something major. Thursday, I came home to 2 police cars in my driveway. Heart pounding, thinking something happened. Turns out Jessica called them, said I was holding her hostage, that I'd locked her in and taken her keys. A complete lie, but dramatic enough to get a response. The officers were professional, asked for my side of the story, and I showed them the eviction notice, the emails, all my documentation. Explained she was free to leave any time. She just didn't want to. One officer actually rolled his eyes, said they get these calls more than people think. They confirmed Jessica had her phone, her keys, access to leave whenever she wanted, and left. She looked absolutely ridiculous standing there, and I watched it click for her that manipulation wasn't going to work. That weekend, Jessica threw what she called a self-care gathering. Invited Michelle, Chloe, and Nicole for a girls' night. They showed up Friday evening with wine and portable speakers, set up in my living room like they owned it, started blasting music around 8. I gave them until 9, then marched to the breaker box and flipped the circuit for the main floor. Everything went dark. Music died. Confused voices everywhere. Then I marched to my office. Pulled up bagpipe music on my phone, connected my Bluetooth speaker, and cranked the volume to max. Scottish war pipes blasted through the entire house, at a level that made conversation absolutely impossible. Within 20 minutes, all 3 friends had grabbed their stuff and bolted. Jessica came screaming over the music, but I just pointed at my noise-canceling headphones and kept working. She gave up around midnight. I turned off the pipes and slept in Caleb's room again. Door locked, perfectly peaceful. Sunday morning, I woke to phone notifications, messages asking if I was selling my TV, coffee table, dining chairs. Confused, I checked Facebook Marketplace and found my furniture listed from Jessica's account. Priced way below value. Must go today. With photos from inside my house. I reported the listings immediately, messaged every buyer explaining the items weren't for sale and she didn't own them, then confronted her. She was making breakfast like nothing happened, and when I showed the screenshots, she shrugged, said she needed deposit money for a new place. I told her if she tried selling anything else, I'd file a police report for theft, and she finally seemed to understand I wasn't playing. That afternoon, I sat her down one final time, laid out her options: leave peacefully by this coming Sunday, just 6 days away, and I'd waive damages and give a neutral landlord reference, or stay the full 30 days, and I'd pursue every dollar in court, plus make sure every landlord knew why she was moving. Her face went pale. She tried to argue, but I cut her off. The choice was hers. She had until midnight to decide. Monday morning, she told me she'd be out by Sunday. Sunday morning, I was up at 6, made coffee, and sat on my front porch watching the sunrise with a calm I hadn't felt in months. Today was eviction day, the day Jessica Walsh would finally leave my house. And my life. I wasn't helping, wasn't negotiating, just making sure she took only what was hers. She started moving boxes around 7, slamming doors, and dragging furniture like she wanted me to know how hard this was. I stayed on the porch, checked my phone, answered work emails, completely ignored the performance. Around 9, she came out with a box of clothes, shot me a look like she expected sympathy or help, but I just sipped coffee and watched her load her car. 3 trips later, she emerged with my reading lamp, the one from my living room for 4 years. I stood up, told her that wasn't hers. She snapped that she'd bought it, that it was a gift, that I was being ridiculous. I pulled out my phone, showed her the Amazon receipt from 2 years before we met. She threw it on the ground instead. The base cracked on concrete, and I just took a photo and added it to my documentation without a word. She stormed inside, and I heard things being thrown. Honestly, it was almost funny watching a 29-year-old have a complete meltdown because manipulation wasn't working anymore. Around 11, her friend Chloe showed up to help. Took one look at the situation, me sitting calm and Jessica rage packing, and I saw the exact moment she realized maybe Jessica's story wasn't accurate. Chloe helped load a few boxes. Asked Jessica quietly if she had somewhere to go, and Jessica snapped she was staying with Michelle. Said it like it was my fault. By noon, most of her stuff was gone. Clothes, toiletries, those white mugs, all the aesthetic junk she'd bought. And I was mentally calculating how much my grocery bill was about to drop. She made one final trip inside, stayed almost 20 minutes, came back out with mascara running down her face. She walked up to where I stood, tried one last play, told me I was going to be so bored without her, so lonely, that I'd regret this forever. I looked at this woman who'd insulted my children, sabotaged my property, tried to sell my furniture, and lied to police. I told her exactly what I'd been thinking for days. Bored, I said, is an underrated state of being. I'll take quiet and peaceful over dramatic and toxic any day of the week. And the only thing I regretted? Not ending this the very first time she complained about my kids. Her face crumpled. She tried to say something else, but I was done. I told her she had 15 minutes for a final walkthrough. Then I was changing locks whether she was finished or not. She grabbed the last box, stormed inside one more time. I heard the bathroom door slam. 14 minutes later, she came out, got in her car without another word, and drove away. I watched her turn the corner, disappear from my street, then went inside. Most of the house looked fine. She'd actually cleaned more than expected, probably trying to prove some maturity point, but when I checked the upstairs bathroom, I found red nail polish poured and dried in the sink drain. Fresh, maybe an hour old, deliberately hardened, petty vandalism on her way out. I took photos from multiple angles, added it to my spreadsheet, noted to get a repair estimate, called a locksmith, and had all exterior locks changed within 2 hours. Sat in my living room looking at the space she'd occupied for 4 months. It felt bigger, lighter, like the house could breathe again. Monday morning, I filed small claims court paperwork, itemized damages, including the salt-ruined coffee maker, cut laptop cable, broken lamp, and sink repair. Came to about $800. Wasn't sure I'd see the money, but it was principle. Actions have consequences. Jessica needed that lesson. The following Monday, when my custody week started, Sarah dropped off Caleb and Ella. First thing Ella asked walking in was if Jessica was still here. I knelt to her level, told her Jessica moved out and wasn't coming back. Relief showed on both kids' faces instantly. Caleb asked if they could be loud again, if they could leave their stuff out, if the house was really theirs again. I told them this house had always been theirs. Nothing and nobody would ever change that. Ella hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Caleb just smiled and ran upstairs like he'd been holding back for months. That night we ordered pizza, ate on the couch watching a movie, left the mess until morning because we could. After the movie, the kids built a massive pillow fort, used every cushion and blanket we owned, made it structurally unsound and completely chaotic. I helped balance the final pillow on top, knowing it would collapse. We were loud, messy, everything Jessica complained about, and it felt absolutely perfect. Wednesday, I got a notification that Jessica posted on Instagram, some long caption about escaping toxic environments and choosing herself. All the influencer buzzwords fishing for sympathy. Comments were disabled, told me she'd gotten backlash before. I didn't bother reading it. A few mutual friends reached out asking what happened. I gave the short version. She insulted my kids. I ended it. She had to leave. Most understood immediately. A few tried playing both sides, and I let those friendships fade. 2 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. Turned out to be Carol, Jessica's mom. She started aggressive. Asked how I could do this. Said Jessica was devastated. I let her finish, then calmly explained what her daughter actually said about my children. Long pause. Then Carol's tone completely changed. She said something that surprised me. She's always been like this. Said it like she was relieved someone else finally saw it. Carol told me Jessica had a pattern going back to high school. Couldn't handle not being the center of attention. Burned bridges with friends whenever someone else got focus. She mentioned Jessica's college roommate moved out mid-semester because Jessica made her life hell after the roommate got a boyfriend. Another time in her 20s, Jessica sabotaged her best friend's engagement party because she wasn't maid of honor. Carol said she'd hoped Jessica had matured, but here we are. She apologized for calling angry. Said she didn't know the full story. Wished me and my kids well. 3 months later, early November, I was at the grocery store with Caleb and Ella, arguing about whether we needed another gallon of milk. I looked up and saw Jessica 2 aisles over. She was with some guy, tall, clean-cut, holding her hand while she picked expensive cheese. When she saw me, her whole body tensed. The guy looked vaguely familiar. Then I noticed his ring finger, a clear tan line, the kind from wearing a wedding band for years and recently removing it. Jessica saw me notice, grabbed his arm, walked the opposite direction without acknowledging us. Ella asked if that was the mean lady who used to live with us. I told her yes, but she wasn't our problem anymore. We finished shopping, went home, made dinner together in our messy, loud, perfectly imperfect house. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat in the dark living room thinking about everything. Jessica was already with someone else, probably feeding him the same lies, probably already making his life revolve around hers. I felt genuinely sorry for that guy, whoever he was. But mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful I saw who she was before it got worse. Grateful my kids didn't have to grow up thinking they were burdens. Grateful for the boring, quiet, peaceful life we had now. The house was a home again, filled with toy cars and homework and bedtime stories. Bored turned out to be exactly what I needed. And my kids deserved a father who would always, always choose them first. What would you have done if you were in my shoes?